Hello everyone, my name's War of Noise because that's what this is. And this is a war of noise, one wherein the forces of the world fight for our attention. Whoever has the larger platform, whoever is allowed to be accepted via the terms and conditions subject to change, and more importantly, whoever screams the loudest are the ones who are heard. I chose this name for this reason. It's a war, with front lines, casualties, different sides, and multiple factions. A large civilian, or what we might call normie, population forced to be caught in the middle, battles, territory captured, end goals, and devastating collateral. It's a war for the mind. Your mind, my mind, the minds of your grandparents, your friends, co-workers, acquaintances, and everyone else, and most especially the minds of the children, as they are the future. It's a mental and spiritual war, one that determines who ultimately controls our reality. The point of this video is to just talk about something I think would benefit those who are also trying to fight in this war. Any side, any affiliation, it really doesn't matter. There is a problem with people not knowing how to navigate the battlefield, so to speak, and unsure as to where to go. Friedrich Nietzsche was right when he said that one must be careful not to become the monsters you are trying to fight, and indeed the abyss does stare back into you. It stared back into me. And what happens is you can become it. You fade into the chaotic static, and then the darkness in between. Your imagination teams up with your anger to turn you into their amalgamized puppet. You become the embodiment of your intake. You become fear and anger. You become the monster. It's true that you are what you eat, intellectually, emotionally, mentally, as much as physically. I see more and more people falling prey to the delirium of this bad diet. So I am here talking to you now to hope and maybe help some people understand how to go about the great war of light and sound more safely. Perhaps even I may convince some not to engage at all. Many would disagree that there are those who should be politically unaffiliated, but I can tell you that there needs to be something left at the end of a war, and if all are to be consumed in the zealotry to fight this war of noise, then the war will never actually end. Maybe it won't anyways, maybe I'm being idealistic, but that's my problem, not yours. First and foremost, if you want to engage in the arts of the information war, then you're first going to need to understand this doesn't even have to be a war in the first place, and you don't even have to be a soldier. Again, maybe I am being idealistic, but I'm also speaking from what I have come to call a hyper-informed perspective. I see that division is necessary to rule over a society too busy fighting itself to fight a true tyranny. The war of noise was waged by those who want us all to fight each other, and so far it's looking like it's working. I saw a pretty good meme recently outlining this quite well. I'll just read it to you and leave a link to it in the description. If you go to the Southwest Desert in the United States and catch 100 red fire ants and 100 large black ants and put them in a jar, at first nothing happens. However, if you violently shake the jar and then dump them all back on the ground, the ants will fight until they eventually kill each other. Thing is, the red ants think the black ants are the enemy and vice versa, when in reality the real enemy is the person who shook the jar. This is exactly what is happening in society today. Liberal versus conservative, black versus white, mask versus anti-mask, and so on. The real question we need to be asking ourselves is who is shaking the jar and why? The impression made is this war was waged by someone convenient to attack. The others, the opposition, you know, them, when in fact they, whoever they are to you, are just as much victims of this war as you are. The real tyrants, the true warmongers, are the owners of the banks, the media, the colleges, the politicians, and the ultra-wealthy whom few of us have ever heard of and probably never will. This sounds crazy, and indeed it should, at least to a normal person. However, with a proper effort and self-awareness, you too one day can sound crazy to normal people too. Second, you must be open to being wrong. Failure is always a part of success. A motto I go by is that I do not aim to be correct, I aim to be effective. If you see the two as the same, you're off on the wrong foot already. Being effective under the pretense you can and will be wrong will lead you to ultimately being correct. And what's going to suck is you're going to be correct about things you never even thought real at one point. It will be uncomfortable, it will be humiliating, it will be humbling, and ultimately you'll find yourself feeling more alone. You will not identify as left or right. You'll see the two-dimensional, linear, blue to red political spectrum as not so much inaccurate as deliberately false and intentionally tribalistic. You'll find the term centrist is loaded to mean undecided, uninformed, benign, indecisive, denialist, and even outright unintelligent. This comes from an increasingly prolific with us or against us mentality, one many people have been forced into against their will. And all of this is still, yes, idealistic. All of this is my hope for you, strange to say. If that sounds scary, if that sounds wrong, if that sounds unhealthy, then I honestly urge you to break away. The interesting thing about the war of noise is you can actually tune out of it. You can walk away for a minute or forever if you choose, but believe me, once you've fallen into the static and begin to see the patterns, once you learn a thing or two that goes directly against what you have been told to believe in a way you can't deny, sorry, but you're stuck. You're in and you can't leave. And it won't be by the hands of others that you stay, it will indeed be by your own. So tread carefully or fall into the menagerie of uniform anger, a barrier I see around me of angry, screaming faces of those who flew too close to the sun. They scream in unison with words they've been told to repeat and views they've been tricked into having. Don't join them, believe me, because the suffering won't ever end and you'll be convinced it's everyone and everything else's fault. Paranoia takes you over and your life becomes one of a terrified animal believing it's constantly surrounded by threats. Eventually you will fabricate those threats, forcing square pegs through round holes. And from there, the best outcome is you simply end up a social pariah. I've seen it before. And then there is the ground beneath that teeming mass of angry faces, one of defeated, nihilistic cynicism populated with those who think nothing can or will ever get better. The sound was too much for them and it overwhelmed their rationale. They, too, fell prey to emotion over logic, equating the two, staring into what appeared to be an overwhelming and disastrous mess that looked to be without answer. From there, they gave up. I don't recommend that either. If you find yourself feeling like it's all fucked, just burn it down and start over, screw everything, and those who are happy are stupid, then it's time to back the fuck off for a minute. Turn off the news, get the hell outside and get some actual sunlight, watch cat videos, do some gardening, you know what I mean. What I recommend is have a side topic to look up, hobbies to partake in, exercise, eat well, you know, all that healthy stuff, normal people stuff. Do that. For me, it's crafting leather wristbands, reading up on archaeology, and working out at home. Projects, too, cleaning and organizing projects that never seem to end and help dull down the static. That's what I use to pull myself out, and I recommend you have a few of those ready, or already going, before you dive into this insanity. That being said, let's dive in then. First off, what are your motivations? Are you aiming to inform yourself to shit on others, be better than, talk down to, and be condescending towards the sheep, the uninformed, the them in an us versus them, not with us, you're against us dichotomy? If this is your motivation, then I honestly encourage you to fuck off. Period. We have enough of that going around. We don't need more of it. Now, if your motivation instead is to gain greater understanding for yourself and then move forward to solve problems and help others, then okay. Understand that you're probably going to be buried under an ongoing deluge of new channels, new voices, and will be one of millions. To that I say, so what? That's not the point. Yes, try to advertise yourself. Yes, make an effort to be seen, and don't gauge your success by views, upvotes, likes, points, or whatever. Gauge your success instead by your own work product and the effort you put into it. In other words, how satisfied you are with what you've done. Otherwise, you're doomed to quit from discouragement, so cut to the end and just don't bother. I mean this seriously. It won't be worth it if that's the case. So, Say you're good so far. Next question. What interests you? What do you remember? For me, actually, it's Big Pharma and the opioid epidemic. It's because of my involvement in Alcoholics Anonymous. 12-step programs work. I've been sober for over a decade. I've also watched opioids start to eat our society from the inside out like termites. It has claimed the lives of many of my friends and fellows within 12-step programs, and it's what ultimately dragged me into all this. I started to look into the numbers of the opioid epidemic and found not only that they were staggering, but ultimately unknown. And from these personal reasons, in I went. Years later, here I am, and I'm making this video primarily out of the fact that I was mostly, I guess, self-taught with all this, with, yes, some invaluable aid from others along the way, and still fell into the pitfalls I'd like to warn others about now and have already done. So my advice is, keep the topic of your study as narrow as possible and something you're interested in. Remember this, someone with a little knowledge but taking action is actually far more valuable than someone with a vast knowledge base who does nothing about it. You could be the smartest person ever and still be a benign know-it-all who no one ever wants to talk to because, you know so much and won't let anyone else get a word in edgewise. Better path. Know a lot about a specific topic you're interested in and find yourself constantly engaging in, and then be polite about it. Remember, we are open to being wrong here. The first rule of that rule is talk with other people, not at them. Those are, indeed, two different things. For as one-sided a YouTube channel is, I am always open to comments, suggestions, and additional info, even if it disproves me. Next up, where do you go for this information? Well, the internet, right? Oftentimes, I'm sure. Books are cool too, guys, as are magazines. One great thing about them is you don't need an internet connection to read them. They can't be mysteriously deleted, and they don't run out of batteries. They also don't suddenly change. For me, my primary source of current information is Reddit. Reddit is damn overwhelming, and I recommend engaging in it sparingly. The news sources I follow are vast, but this is because I'm able to take into account the biases of them and filter the information accordingly. This comes from time. Remember this, news is a product meant to be sold. That's always been the case, whether we like it or not, and news stories are the main weapons used in the war of noise. When you go to a source or a specific story therein, ask yourself, who is this being sold to? In other words, what biases and perspectives are being catered to? Who is being targeted? Who are the us and who are the them? This isn't always the case, but it's a good place to start and something you're going to need to hardwire into yourself. Oftentimes, the better news sources will avoid this despite their own biases. Personally, I like Reuters, Associated Press, and The Hill. Those are all more liberal than they aren't, but as far as unbiased as possible news goes, that's a good place to start. When getting into sources that cater to specific sides, like The Root for Afrocentrism, Fox for right-wing, Huffington Post for left-wing, and so on, make sure to always verify their sources. What are they sourcing? Is it a tweet? I love those. So thorough, posting a tweet and writing an entire news article off of it, whatever. But if a tweet or even Facebook post comes directly from a politician or someone of verified prominence, that's pretty safe. Even then, though, you need to take into account the product aspect. If Washington Post makes an article about what Trump said this one time, I recommend actually watching the clip or seeing their source of this. Oftentimes, it's more or less exactly what is stated, but every now and then something is omitted. And this is the lie that media in general engages in the most, lies by omission. They give 80% of something and present it as 100%, when the omitted 20% completely changes the truth. This happens a lot. It's exhausting, and it's typical. Over time, you'll find out how to filter this. Over time, you'll figure out how to catch it. And that leads me to my next point. Time. Lots of it. If you're going to dive in, I recommend keeping your opinion out of it for a while. You're going to need to adapt to the conditions, and wait for longer-term pattern recognition to set in. From there, you can start making accurate statements and predictions. In the interim, ask questions, inquire, probe a bit, but don't declare a stance on complex issues. You're going to find it will backfire. When you feel most comfortable and it'll sting, you'll be wrong. Don't go there. Be prudent, be patient, sit back and watch for a while. Wait for the chaos to start aligning itself and the pieces start to fall into place. Next up, as for those pieces specifically, that would be bits of information you get from sources. Save your sources, archive your sources, print them out, organize them. I will leave a link in the description to an internet archive and how to use it. As for saving them, I recommend a word processor. Copy and paste the web address, the title of whatever it is, and the archived link underneath in a word processor so you can save it. Break up the document files into categories. In those, have subcategories. Think of it like you're doing a research paper, and no, you're not going to remember all of it. Save everything. If you come across a PDF, print it out. Get a file going. If you want to take this seriously, then make sure to do all this. This is why all my sources for my videos are so thorough. I save everything. And lastly, what do you do with all this? What's the point of even engaging in all this in the first place? Remember this: wisdom is knowledge in action. Here's an example. If I was aware of a friend or acquaintance who received a full prescription of Vicodin from their dentist because of something stupid like a goddamn toothache, I would intervene. I'd warn this person of taking them, that even though they are trusting their dentist with this, their doctor, to have their best interests in mind, right? They might want to reconsider it. I'd warn them of the fact that this is how people become addicted. I'd say this is powerful stuff. They need to be careful. I'd offer to give them information on this, information I've saved, right? Since I was knowledgeable in this case, I now have a responsibility to say something. I would be in the wrong if I didn't. Prudence is a virtue. Act on knowledge and make informed decisions because of it. Don't give in to fear or fatalism. Be patient. Help others. Don't fall into the abyss. Take care of yourself. And I'll see you on the battlefield. Until then, as usual, tune out next time.